Nett Radio, taking you above and beyond.
I remember when you children were weak and hungry. I took you to my bosom, fed you my oil. And even when you took and wasted and left me drained, there was always love for you in my soil. Even when my older children, they tried to shame me, setting no rules for the younger ones, bringing such grief and sadness into my household. In the end, they're still my daughters and sons. I will always be there for you. No matter what you do, whatever joy or pain that you are going through, I will always be there for you. I will be always there for you.
And of course, that is why we are here, because we are here for you also on our TT Radio. Yeah, a little backtrack there. I've been looking in many quarters to find a theme song for Steve's program, since YouTube is blocking all my other international songs. And Steve, I came across this song, over the weekend. I was playing it.
I like it. I
said,
really do.
yeah,
I was coming to it because I know it.
Yeah.
And I said, well, where did he get this thing? It's perfect. It just fits right in.
Yes. So I said when I played it over the weekend, I said, this will be nice for Steve programs. I didn't even call it to ask you. I said I'll try it out and see if he likes it.
Yes, I really do. I really do. And it speaks everything. I'll always be there for you, no matter what it is. And I like it, actually. And it is more than symbolic. It's actually quite revealing in the way it's said.
Well, I'm happy for that. And of course, people, courtesy of the Foundation for Human Development, this is where we go on the inside with Steve on a Wednesday. We didn't have him last week because I had some commitments outside, but that's just how it goes every now and then. But I'm happy that he is here today. How have you been?
I have been good. I have been excited. And this has nothing to do with the topic that I'm going to deal with, but I think I'll share my little bit of excitement. A principal of a secondary school in Port of Spain called me and he said, Steve, the boys, it's a boys' secondary school, they're finishing their first year exams in Cape. And I don't want to just send them off like that. I think I want something uplifting, before they go off on their vacation and so on. So I said, well, what do you want me to do? And he said, no, I leave that up to you. I have confidence in you. So I had a few days to prepare, but a little more like 3 days before I had this horde of young men coming to me, about 40 of them, ages, 17, 18, thereabouts. And I said, well, what will I possibly say to young men? I haven't spoken with young men for a long time in my life. I deal more with adults and so on. What could I say and will they listen? And he wanted them to stay for a whole half day, from 8 to 12. And what could I possibly do from 8 to 12? I say, in my mind, he was finding a stopgap to keep them busy. And he thought of me and he said, well, let's keep them busy. Anyway, I came up with this idea, which I liked. And it was about choosing to live a vibrant inner life. And I was thinking about that even before he had called. And I wanted to program on it actually. How do you make a choice to make the difference between an outer life and an inner life, you know. And so I said, I'm going with that. And I decided to do that. And I contacted a few young people, young men who had made that transition from just simply living a complete outer life to living a vibrant inner life. And so I wanted them to come. They came, there were three of them. But I first started off by doing a presentation on what the outer life is and what the inner life is. And the outer life is really about what you do, the exams, the studying, the girlfriends, the liming, the partying. That's what you do at 18. And they added to it. They talk about the social media, the games and so on. They play sports and all that. So that's a wonderful thing. And that's what you do at 17 and 18. That's what I did at 17 and 18, you know. And that was the outer life. And then I made a list of things that could possibly look at, which you would look at during the morning, of what the inner life is like. And the inner life is about building, connecting relationships, and connecting deeply with people. The inner life is about understanding yourself and your behaviors and why you behave in a certain way, and how that influences other people. The inner life is about your prayer life, your meditation, your the way you behave and so on in terms of your relationship with God and so on. Well, that is part of it. And I went through a list of areas. And then I asked them three questions that they had to answer. Who loves you most that you can think of right now? That's the question one. The second one was, which three relationships you find yourself more involved with or deeply significant with in your own time now? And the other one is, how do you manage to manage, how do you manage to deal with yourself? And what do you do to promote your inner life? Now, you would not believe this. The first question out of the 40, and everybody had a chance to answer, and they all did. Out of the 40 young men, 38 young men said that the person they love the most in their life is their mommy. They did not use the word mother. They used the word mommy. These are 18-year-old boys. Okay? Now, that was significant for me. One said sister, and the other one said father. It was interesting because I hadn't spoken to young men like that the open affection, intimate affection for their mother was key for 17-year-olds. I didn't think that. I had no thoughts, but I didn't think that. The second one was to discuss share the three most significant relationships. Heading the list was parents. Second was God. And third was girlfriend. Again, taken aback completely. I never knew that they had this deep relationship or significant relationship, and openly expressing that in the company of their peers, that most important to them is a relationship with God. Shocking me. I didn't think that God would come there. I think he may be an extra, not a second in the expression. And it opened up my mind. We had a wonderful morning. We had the other three presenters, and they shared their journey. One talked about his journey from a state of gambling, leaving school, searching for money, quick money, got into gambling, got heavy into gambling, almost destroyed his life, and then he turned around, and he gave them his reasons for turning around. Another one discussed very openly and very vulnerably his issue with porn and how he was introduced to porn at age 12, and that became his signature go-to response in life, and how that literally destroyed himself, destroyed his relationships, and so on. And he had to work extremely hard and to shift from that, which was a total outer life, to a kind of a way of living with himself. He had to get therapy. He had to deal with his own behaviors. He had to deal with his anxiety and all that, and all of the trauma that came with that. And then one talked about his journey of lying, and I could see the faces of the young men just with their mouths falling open. And he said, "I was the best liar you ever could think about. I lied to my father, I lied to my parents, I lied and I lied." And he gave them his story of lying and how it had affected him. He's now confronted the issue that brought him to the point of lying, and he has a good job now, and he has conquered that. He doesn't feel the need to do that anymore. So it was a fantastic morning in that sense. And at the end of it, while they were waiting on their maxis to come for them, some came and shared their absolute shock that they would have had that kind of an experience, which they never had in all of their lives. They never had vulnerable men being vulnerable, opening their lives and their fears and their hurts and their concerns and their weaknesses to other men. And openly doing that in a way, almost in the forms of confession, in a sense. And they never experienced anything like that in their lives. And I said, maybe this is something that we can hit upon in the way we try to manage boys. And I wanted to do a program on dealing with men and going back into the violence that we experience from a lot of men, violence in their family relationships, violence in terms of how they manage people and how they behave in terms of crime and so on, and the roots of it, and where we have failed many a time in the school system. Because I was there, that's what the job was. We have failed to really reach into the depths of the story. We have been superficial. We have punishment, we have so-called counseling, we have all kinds of things like that. We need to do this, we need to expel, we need to suspend, and so on. And behind all of that is really a lot of pain and hurt, destroying people. And the issue is not the pain and the hurt, because we all have that. The issue is the vulnerability, the ability to express that, the ability to share that with someone so that the healing can actually begin. That's where we are failing. So we have not created, in a sense, the kind of spaces, whether it is within the context of the family, or whether it is in the context of the school, or whether it is in the context of the churches that we have and the services that people go to. We have not created the kind of, I may dare use the word, sacred space or spaces so that people can choose and feel free to be vulnerable without fearing destruction of their soul. And that, to me, is the essence of where we have to go in the healing story. We have not done that. Today, I'm talking this, and today I really prepared to talk more about shame. And it came out of that. The whole concept of shame comes out of the inability to be vulnerable, the inability to share that. When we shame is a painful feeling of believing that we are flawed, that we are unworthy of love and belonging. Shame is what destroys us. Because we feel it. No, everybody feels shame, and there's a difference between shame and guilt and embarrassment. I'm prepared to share that. But everybody feels that. And in a sense, it's how we manage that that makes the difference. How we do that makes a difference. When we feel shame, we're most likely to protect ourselves. That's what we do by blaming someone or something. That's what we do. Or by rationalizing our lapse. So we rationalize it and we explain it away. And we men are brilliant when it comes to that. We offer a kind of an apology in a sense, and it's a disingenuous apology. We offer that, not really meaning very much of it, but hoping it would ease the story away. We hide in different ways. So shame is the root, one of the roots, or maybe the major root, where men particularly, when we are shamed, we have to find ways of dealing with it. And sometimes, you could see it. And I remember my childhood, I remember being shamed by my father, shamed by my brother. I remember those stories of being shamed. And you hold on to that because you build a little bit of resentment inside of you without actually saying anything. Nobody wants to be shamed. Nobody wants to feel that they're flawed. Nobody wants anybody to say you're not good enough because the world doesn't tolerate, the world doesn't accept not good enough people. Nobody does. We bash people who are not good enough, especially males. We do the same for females. So, but it's worse for the males as far as I'm concerned. So we believe in a sense that shame creates that kind of disturbance in us that we can't get rid of. Now, shame is highly correlated with addiction. And this is coming from a lot of research done by Dr. Brené Brown. And she did a fantastic amount of work on it, especially with men and other people too. When she talked about addiction and violence and oppression and depression, eating disorders, bullying, all these behaviors and the trauma events in our lives that people produce on us come from that inner sense and deep shame that we feel over something. Now, you have to remember, some of us were born into shame. Some parents have not, without intending to do so, they do that. They say hurtful things. You wanted a boy, you get a girl, you say something about a boy. Sometimes we make comments about the physical stature of the person. And even when the person is a baby and they're not hearing, they feel your energy that you are not happy with them. You're not happy with who they are. They sense it. And when they grow up and they see your behavior towards them and you prefer this one because this is a nicer one and this one quiet and this one is thing and so on, and you make these open comments to children. You shame them. And it doesn't go away. It goes inside, into the unconscious sometimes, and is only waiting for an opportunity for explosion at some point. We lived in a world in my time, in my younger days, we lived in a world where people thought and believed that shame is a good tool for keeping people in line. And some people still do that. They say if a lot of teachers for that, and they take you up, they put you in front of the board, they make you do the work, write it out on the board, you can't do it right. They give you a good whipping on your buttocks. They say things to you and to the class about this boy, and he worse than the father. His father was a nothing. I've heard teachers say that to people, to young people, and we use these comments glibly sometimes, thinking that when we shame the person, their behavior will change and they will want to do better. So it's a thought process. So if you beat a child in front of others and you shame him, he will never do that again. That's what you think. That's what you thought. And it backfired. It always backfires because it's an emotion that goes deep inside, stays inside, and the only result of that is resentment. Quiet, building resentment. Coming deep. And sometimes because their powerlessness in actually fighting back or responding to you, because you are the adult, you have the power, they have no power, they hold that for somebody else. That's why it's correlated with bullying. That's why it's correlated with addiction. It's you run away and you get your power somewhere else. You deal with your pain and your hurt and your shame through your drugs and your alcohol and your marijuana to keep the brain cool. And the violence, because the violence that you receive was emotional violence, and you have now become physically violent on people. So it is a difficult thing, very difficult thing to handle. And when we do not handle that very well, we create these kinds of people we have out there today, our men and some of our women. We create this situation where all they can do is hurt others. If we don't transmute our pain, we are going to transmit it. And that is what is happening. And it's coming from the way we were treated. So I'm suggesting as at the very beginning, we have to create spaces where people can be free to share, open, be vulnerable, speak openly about their disconnectedness and loneliness. To speak openly about their anxiety, their addiction, their depression. That's a safe space, and we must have these spaces for people. And when we can be vulnerable and trust in that small community of space, when we know that we will be received and we will not be laughed at and we will not be thrown apart, that the people walk with us and hold our hands and say, I understand. I feel for what you're going through. Then the healing begins. And it's about the healing. It's about the healing. And so those 3 young men who came and shared vulnerably their stories with these budding, happy, bright 18-year-olds who are going to be in executive positions in the world to come, they understood what vulnerability was. And they understood that they too need to be vulnerable if they have to do well. Let me stop there. Oh, wow. Let me stop there. Charles.
Yes, see, sorry about that. I was trying to troubleshoot something here that's giving me a little problem. So I just kind of left you momentarily. Yes, so we are at that point where we can open the lines. Yeah, so people, you can call us at 281-1315. That's 281-1315, and you can get in on the discussions. I mean, you listen to what we're talking about, and of course, now it's a good time for you to be part of that discussion. So we welcome your calls, right? So I see a call coming in. It will be there shortly. Right. Caller, morning to you. Morning to you, caller.
Yeah, hey, so Charles, hey,
Morning, Dean.
yeah, man, God.
Morning.
Yeah, I like this topic because people have been talking about it. Our children, that we see in the video, the fighting, and I think we're not getting it. This kind of punitive approach, and we have to do them this and police and stuff. When it is really, our young people are living in pain, and we feel that we just throwing more pain on them. And
Mm,
this to me shows the violence that the kind of so we have children feeling pain, adults have pain. They want to remedy the pain by more
mm,
pain, and
yeah.
and creating this hostile um, circle of violence and 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 a kind of hate, and then we think that we're resolving it when it is that we need to create safe spaces for our children to speak about their pain, and one of those spaces are the schools and the community
Yes.
centers, and we need to make them feel that they could speak about this without ridiculing them. And once you do that, children will start to open up to you. If they trust, they will open up, and we will see, at least we will hope to see a behavioral change, even because they don't know. I've tired hear it on this program and about when children really get this ability to share and speak, and there's a back and forth. You hear it. You hear it from them. Thanks.
Mhm.
As your one of the guests you had, she said, she went to talk to the children, the young girls, and when she spoke to them, they came up after and they said, thanks for giving us the confidence, because they thought as 14-year-old girls, this is the bright behavior. It was about having sex with young, to show love, how to show love. So they
Mhm.
feel, a lot of young girls and boys feel that to show love, you show love by having physical intimacy. But when they realize that they don't have to, you can't just be a friend with a
Mhm.
boy, they realize, wow, big, and
Mhm.
also for the boys, and
Yeah.
also for when young men feel that they have to retaliate because you need it, this is how you have to do it, this is the way you go about it. And when they realize there are other options available to them, but we feel that's why I don't have confidence in police youth clubs, because they they instill a sense of a kind of masculinity that they feel that they themselves feel that you have to be a man, and they put it out onto those younger
Mhm.
men who they feel.
Yes.
And this
Mhm. I didn't know
concept
that.
of masculinity that we walk around with young men is from adults to they teaching them, and they say, yeah, these, and I see it in these specific, because these men come with ideas how men supposed to be, which is,
Mhm.
and when I find it's totally wrong, man. The, this concept of masculinity, the concept of the woman, the concept, all these concepts that we throw in on our children, and then they're confused, and you see in them acting out in many different
Mhm.
ways. Some extrovertly and some introvertly, because the introvert one is also poisonous too, right? The ones where
Mhm.
they have to they pen up all the emotions, and you hear about the cuttings, and then the addiction. You talk about addiction, and addiction is
Yeah.
a very introvert, painful way. I took that
Yeah.
journey. I went through that journey of addiction, and you know that a lot of, you wake up and, oh boy, this is too much. Yeah, but you
Mhm.
next you go the other cycle until you find a way to jump out of it and walk your
Yes.
own path. You have the
Mhm.
confidence, but somebody gives you that confidence, and and that's the
Mhm.
thing. And these cycles, but the cycle for young people is so hard to break, because we always I and the as a as adults, we always want to we feel that we could, what you are exactly saying, we could change it by being punitive, or sad, or just dreading people into change. And that is not
Mhm.
going to happen until I hear
No.
man on Tony Fraser thing talking about that. Oh yeah, police, and I know talking like a hard man thing, and until and I'm saying like just don't get it. They just don't get what is needed for our children to come, and even our adults. And we have seen it with Wayne Chance's program, all these hard men who come out of
Mm.
prison, but 90 out of 98% success rate of men not going back into the hard life because they were given an opportunity to be heard and somebody to stand next to them through the troubled times. And when they go through the,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
have the
Mhm.
urge to be violent, and to go back into the life of, a negative lifestyle. And that's the thing. People need that. We need to invest in these things. And up to now, I don't know why people don't realize this. And thanks for sharing that, man.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Thank you very much for sharing with us there, Dean. 2811315. That's 2811315. It's a real complex situation, and trying to strike the right balance, Steve. With some of these situations, if you really don't have an idea as to what to do, you could just make a whole mess of the whole thing.
Which we all do sometimes. Which is so true. Um, it really we don't know, and culture and the conditioning of culture um has a lot to do with it. We grew up sometimes in the ways in which this is how a man should be. This is how we should bring up boys. This is how we should bring up girls. This is the culture of how we do it. Um, um, Long ago, it might have been very straightforward. Now, because everybody is exposed to different forms of information and types of information, so that even as a child at 4 and 3, and you're watching the television and you're seeing a father talking to a son differently, and you see a father talking to a daughter differently, those are the images that stay with you. So that when you find your father choosing a different kind of behavior and method, you get confused because you have been conditioned by a moving scene on a television program, and yet your father in real life is actually going in the opposite direction,
Right.
beating you and cursing you and so on. You say, well, I can't understand. So
Yes.
it's really quite confusing.
All right. Let's take the call. Caller, morning.
Yes.
Good morning, Sir Charles. Good morning, Mr. Steve.
Morning, Junior.
Morning.
Yes, man. Mr. Steve, you hit the nail on the head just now with the culture. It's a culture or something, and the way that, and I'm glad that you will highlight. I know we're talking about on children, right? But I'm glad that you can highlight the men, right? And as I say, sometimes men feel vulnerable in sharing because sometimes again it comes down to a society and problem where men feel if they make themselves vulnerable, they are
Mhm.
looked at a particular way. So I was in a session with some young people, and
Mhm.
one of the young lady was saying, what if if her husband, she see her husband crying, is she something to be wrong with that, And
Yes.
I say, well, why something wrong with that? If the person crying, because if the person is person, he had to express,
Mhm.
nothing
Yeah.
wrong with him crying because he's been expressive. No, 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 no,
Mhm.
no. And again, it come back to culture, but it's something else. And the next thing too, I want to introduce to the conversation too, and for men too, right? That even in the Caribbean, now again, it come down to a culture. go for counseling. Nothing wrong with going for counseling because it have
Correct.
men. And I dealing specifically with as they bring up the topic on boys, these are young men. I am dealing specifically with that because young men go through a lot of stuff, and they are dealing with a
Yes.
lot of stuff, right? And we would tell them, no, well, you need to be a man, and up to now, no, nobody do have a proper definition for what what this man supposed to entail, right?
Yeah.
But we keep on asking and we keep on wanting more from them. We keep on, again in our culture, they are not supposed to show emotions. They
Yeah.
they are dealing with a lot of stuff, right?
Yes.
And do have no avenue. And I like, the young men and them can I say one who was a liar, right? And he had to deal with that. The one that way was a gambler, and that's why much young men fall into this gambling.
Yes.
And
Yes.
even some of them at that age are going to school, and some of them get tell you, hey, if me and gamble, I can't come to school and I see these things with my own eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, I was able at the point in time I wanted to, hey, all do a gamble, all come and check me, and I could give all the money for school, right? But all the dog, it try to kind of discourage them that because again, but again, as the one guy tell me, hey, if I don't gamble, I can't go to school now. Because, he have nobody to give him anything, and that's a reality in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm glad that the other guy could have talked about dealing with the pornography, right? Which is our next serious issue in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, in the world, right? But I like to belong to Trinidad and Tobago. But again, Mr. Steve, I like to introduce counseling, men. Counseling because sometimes it's a big man, Mr. Steve. Here, what I tell you, it's a big man that I just talk to her childhood trauma. It's a big man have mommy and daddy issue. It's a big man have self-esteem issue that affecting their marriages, even to date that when you and I encourage you. I encourage you. A big man right now, buddy. You need to go for counseling. Because they're trying to take on too much and you're not dealing with it in a proper way, and I don't want to know, you snap. Because if you snap with what you had to deal with, it's not going over good for you and for your family. So it's a serious conversation that we had to have more about men. And it's okay, men, to be vulnerable. This Superman that tell us that we had to be Superman of fictitious character. Right, but even Superman had a weakness with kryptonite. So it's okay, Mr. Steve. Men, I like to tell men that, and again, you don't know everything. So just like Mr. Steve, that is my contribution.
Thank you so very much.
And thanks for sharing, Junior. Really appreciate it. Well, Steve, how are we leaving our listeners this morning? What is the message we sending them home with?
We send them home with find a space, find a person, find someone you trust. Everybody needs to talk and share and reveal the inner self. We can't keep it locked up too long because it affects the outer self eventually. So let's work at that, and if each one tell one, let's talk about what is shaming you inside, and making you feel you're not good enough. Let's do that a little bit more, and we'll have some healthier men out there, and less conflict in all those relationships, and less violence in our society.
Okay, well, that's not a bad way for us to leave it. Steve, thank you so much. Steve, did you tell people how to get in contact with you?
Yes, so we are the Foundation here for Human Development. We are physically located in Cascade, 36 Cascade Road. We can be contacted on our email, which is foundationhd@gmail.com, or via WhatsApp, phone 4826500.
Okay. Steve, thank you so much. Enjoy your day, enjoy your week, and God's willing, we'll talk again next week, Wednesday.
We'll talk again next week, God willing. Yes, take care.
All right, people, this has been On the Inside with Steve Williams, right here on New Era TT Radio.
Me drained. There was always love for you in my soil. Even when my older children, they tried to shame me, setting no rules for the younger ones, bringing such grief and sadness into my household. In the end, they're still my daughters and sons. I will always be there for you. No matter what you do, whatever joy or pain that you are going through, I will always be there for you. I will be always there for you. Everybody always call me a blessed mother. Mama Trini, God must love you, they'd say. Hello, high water, I would just rise and embrace you, protecting my children in every way. Even when you fight and argue about different fathers, remember, the middle passage brought them straight to my door. Mama never worry about no race, I just love them. And so my blood is boiled when you start to walk. I will always be there for you. No matter what you do, whatever joy or pain that you are going through, I will always be there for you.